kind of talking endlessly about the need for leaders to connect with their employees, and that culture is such an important part of being able to attract and retain employees. I'm really excited about our guest today, who is Mikal Harden, co-founder of Juno Search Partners. She and her partner created this organization to be a really different kind of talent and staffing agency. And we're going to hear from her about how this really is all about culture and the journey to be the ultimate connectors. Greetings. I'm Holly DePalma.
And I'm Margaret Urich.
And, it doesn't take a lot to get me excited, and I get excited for every guest that we have, but I am really excited about today because we have, I think we have one of the just really amazing leaders in the Philadelphia area on our podcast today. And it is Mikal Harden, who is one of the co-founders of Juno Search Partners, the ultimate connectors, which we're going to talk to her about. And, it's Juno is a women-owned business. And I in preparing for this, I have a whole sheet of the awards. It's 4 years of Philly 100. It's 5 years of Inc. 5000, Soaring 76, 2 years in a row. And most recently, Best Places to Work in 2022 for the medium-sized firm category. Multiple HR People of the Year nominees. I can keep going. So we're going to talk to Mikal about how she and her partner have built this amazing organization.
Yeah. So I have to say, Mike, I just hit my microphone. Sorry about that. So everything Holly just said is amazing. And if it was only that, I would still have been so thrilled to meet you today. But I've been working with MEA for over 4 years now. And I've been listening to Holly talk about Mikal Harden for over 4 years now, and just saying how amazing she is. So this is truly, I don't even know you, and it's a real treat. I knew it was going to be a treat coming into this today. And I know Holly did just go through a list of your accomplishments. And I know that you are aware that this podcast is for our HR community, or for, I should say, the HR community. So I'd like to ask you to share, think about your resume, think about everything that you've done, and knowing our community, what do you think would be most impactful for them to hear about you?
Well, I think that it would be very impactful for Holly to call my mother-in-law and tell her all the things that she just...
I'm rolling in.
Put her number in chat. We'll take care of that.
Thank you. That's a great introduction. To Holly's point, we started Juno in September of 2010, so just over 12 years ago. It's a particularly interesting time as we have been acquired as of November 22. So we're less than 3 months into the acquisition and up to our eyeballs in, sort of all the integration and learning a lot along the way. So interesting time for me, certainly, and a very interesting time in Juno's history.
That's exciting. And I will share that as Margaret said, I do know Mikal, and I was introduced to Mikal's partner in 2010, right when you guys started your business, as by someone whom you had placed. And this woman said to me, "You just have to meet these two women. They are not like anybody else you've ever met." I spent a little period of my professional life working in a search firm. And I would go home, I would cry my whole way home. But it was like, pick up your phones. And it was a very environment that was not one that I felt was a good one for me, nor was it one that I could be my authentic self. And it is true that anywhere I've gone where there are Juno people, there is a discussion of how this is the best place I've ever worked and how I love this company more than anything. And it's from new employees to long-term employees. Talk to us about the culture that you all have built. And I can only assume it's been intentional, but talk to us about that.
Well, I think that, the thing that struck us when we were, sort of talking about what this could look like and how we could build it, and At the time, I was at an executive search firm downtown. Vicky was with a temp staffing firm, and no fault to my firm. I was placing high level accounting and finance folks, and that was I joined the firm just as the bottom was dropping out during the mortgage crisis. So that was a particularly challenging time to be in search and staffing. And Vicky, it was in temp staffing, which is just a lot of sort of getting on an elevator and hitting every floor. And we sort of commiserated on some of our experiences and how everybody seemed to be measuring the wrong things, right? Like I spent time with two firms. One was a contingency agency, and then one was an executive search firm. And the first experience I had was it was all volume. And that's how they measured success, right? So we had a counter on the phone, and on the debt every morning I would walk in, and there was yesterday's sort of numbers were on my desk. And it was made you feel a little bit like you were in elementary school, right? So if you missed 80 to 100 calls, it was like circled in red. And then of course you get a job, right? That's why you're making 80 to 100 calls. And then it's a race to kind of throw out, I'll use the phrase, throw paper at people, right? So we need 5 candidates to these guys by Friday. Okay, well, what if we don't have the right candidate? So it was all about volume and speed, and your competition was the person in the next kind of cube over, right? Because I was a cube farm basically. And so, you could have 10 accounts that you were targeting. And, I remember one of my friends and colleagues at the time got an account that I had listed as a target, and she couldn't keep it. She had to pass it over. Well, I wasn't having any luck. She got it. That was the rules. So there were like very specific rules. And so what Vicky and I just started talking about is, it's interesting that we're in the people business and we're never really talking about the people, right? Like on one side of the coin, you have a client, a company who is in some sort of pain, right? Because they've got an open position. And so some work's not getting done, or somebody's doing extra work. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got a candidate who, a job transition is, I think, one of the top 5 most stressful things you can do in life. And nobody's humanizing this process, right? So that was the first thing we kind of talked about. We're going to focus on quality, not quantity. We're not going to worry about how much and how many. And okay, if I can place 1 out of 4 jobs that I get, then I'm, I can tracking all these metrics and numbers. So I think that was kind of just the first, just she and I, Vicky and I started Juno on a very limited budget in our home offices. We actually didn't know each other very well, so we were getting to know each other's work styles and personalities and building trust. But it was we haven't been aligned on every single thing along the way, as you might imagine, but we were very, very aligned on the basics foundation of how we were gonna build Juno.
Oh, go ahead, Holly.
No,
I'll
you
let
go.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We're usually not this polite. So the concept of quality over quantity, how did that then show up in the culture that you started to create? Obviously that was the basis of it, but where did that go, do you think?
Well, I think that, has always translated down to our employees. We had the same mantra of how we were going to treat clients and candidates was how we were going to treat employees, right? So, our philosophy was treat people really well. You take care of people inside your walls, and they're going to take care of you externally. And so, the folks that we've hired along the way who have really embraced that and have embraced our philosophy of get out in the community, get to understand your vertical, get to understand your market, become a known entity in kind of what you do, have been wildly successful at Juno. And that certainly hasn't been everybody along the way. Not everybody has, embraced our philosophy and approach. Because it's not always easy, as first of all, business isn't always easy, and secondly, I think recruiting, we're very tethered to the economy. So, can be a bumpy ride, but, I think it's worked out pretty well.
So you just keyed in on something, which was, it isn't an environment for everybody. Right. So this is around, connecting not only with your client base, but your employees, and not just your employees, but your candidates. Talk to me about a time that maybe someone was working for you who wasn't a great fit, and how you figured it out. What was it that, you sort of said, oh no, this is a potential challenge, but who was also producing, and how you handled it?
Oh, geez. Not well, probably. Some of my early lessons were always around this very topic. So I think,
right, because, and I'm interrupting you, and I apologize, but
I'm used to it. I'm your friend.
I know, but that's like the rub, right? Like this is what our culture, this is what we're doing. We're starting a new business. We want to be different, but this person's producing, but doesn't embody our culture. What do we do?
Yeah, right. So that's always been tough, because it's kind of easy to, we're in an industry that you can measure pretty easily, right? You can measure at least success on paper really easily. So early-ish on, we hired somebody who was very quickly, it was obvious that we were not aligned on philosophy, on how we handle client relationships, what candidates mean, right? This individual was often like, I would get calls from candidates, so-and-so didn't spend a lot of time with me. I was really disappointed. Why didn't you spend time with this person? I don't have anything for her. Well, okay, but she's in a job search, and she's, in transition. She's upset, and we can spend some time talking to her and offer advice. And, who can we introduce? We're always thinking about, okay, if I don't have anything, who can I introduce you to? Who can I pay it forward? How can I sort of leave you better than you are currently? And I also tolerated a lot of things that I would no longer tolerate, behaviors that I would no longer tolerate, challenges in a way that I would no longer tolerate. And quite honestly, I think, things that I should not have tolerated in terms of this person's philosophy on big life things. So to be perfectly honest with you, I let it kind of go on too long, right? This person was successful when confronted, would say the right things, and then quickly would go back into, some poor behavior, until finally something was posted that was really terrible on, I don't know, Instagram or Facebook, and a couple people brought it to me, and that was just enough. That was just, that day was it, right? That was the day. Yeah.
So what'd you learn from that?
Trust your gut. Doesn't get better, that's often what we say, because people still surprise you. We're in this game of identifying talent, right? And then sometimes we hire somebody, we're like, shit, how did we not see?
Or did I see it and pretend I didn't?
Right.
Because I didn't want to, right? Yeah.
Because you wanted this person, right? For whatever reason. I think that happens a lot.
Yeah. I had another experience where I actually hired a really good friend for a big job, and very quickly it was, it eroded at the culture. And, again, there was no trust. There was a lot of underperformance. There was issues with the client. There were issues with candidates. And it's, I really wanted it to work, like emotionally, I really wanted it to work. And so you like put up with it for a long time.
So clearly there's no foolproof way of making that hire, like making a perfect hire. But I would imagine over the years, you've figured out how to do it better. So is there in your interviewing process something that you do to try and help make sure that you're hiring for your culture? Is there a particular question you ask or something that you've adopted as just a practice to help make sure we're hiring for culture?
That's a good question. I don't have like, oh, this is my interview question. In
Really?
fact, I don't have so here's something terrible that this is like not good advertising or branding for me so far. I hate interviewing.
Oh, stop.
I do not like interviewing.
This is fun. We're not interviewing. We're just chatting.
No.
I think
don't like interviewing.
Oh, you don't like interviewing people?
Yes.
Stop it.
I do
Folks,
not.
you heard it here first.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to be very conversational. There are certainly things that I remember early on. I used to love. We used to always say, I gotta hire college athletes. College athletes know how to take direction and be part of a team, and they understand what it means to win, and they understand what it means to lose, I mean, recruiting is one of those fields where a lot of career transition, like in pandemic, I think we've hired, I'm going to totally misquote this, but 5 teachers that were just like, I don't want to teach anymore. I mean, super organized, self-motivated, killing it, doing just a great, I mean, just made a transition like that. Recent college grads, some who like just kill it, and then some who, really surprise me. So it is, I think recruiting is tricky because in rare cases, I've hired recruiters actually. At least on the agency side. So for context, we're sort of, I look at our business as Juno Search Partners and Juno Talent Solutions. And on the talent solutions, they're talent consultants that are recruiters and talent acquisition professionals, and they're, focused on clients and dedicated to clients. And of course, they're, have great backgrounds in talent acquisition. But oftentimes on the agency side, I don't like hiring recruiters, quite honestly.
Yeah, I once worked with a friend of mine who owns his own law firm, and I was helping him hire an executive assistant, and an assistant for him. He said paralegal-ish assistant. He said, I don't want anybody from a law firm. I was like, well, what do you want? And he said, I don't want to have to reteach somebody who learned it all wrong. And he was a solo practitioner, and for sure we can learn some bad habits in certain places, and it's hard to unlearn. So you use the comment, pay it forward, which isn't necessarily something I have heard in the recruiting and staffing and talent business. And to me, knowing you, that's something that is really unique to you, to your environment, and to, partnering with your firm on a couple instances. Sort of expand upon that comment a little bit. What does it mean to you to pay it forward, and how do you pay it forward?
Well, at the end of the day, and one thing that we coach our recruiters on is, we talk to everybody, right? Like that's another thing that we know. You wouldn't be allowed to be on the phone with a candidate too long if they weren't the right fit, right? You had to kind of get rid of them and then quickly move on to the next call. And so again, we sort of like, what are we doing here? Right? What are we doing? And so we take we've branded ourselves, of course, as the ultimate connectors, and we take that very seriously. And so we take time with clients. I mean, we take time with clients to understand their company and their position and what they do and why it's critical, and their leadership team. we understand if we're not the best firm, to work with them on certain positions, we always try to find the best firm who is, and make that connection and make that partnership. And similarly with candidates, I mean, my best placements I've never made a dime on, because I think it's really important to just be an advocate for people, right? It's hard enough. So you've got a candidate is in transition, and we're going to quickly hang up on that person and not try to be helpful. That's not helpful. And what we found is it always comes back. I have a story of somebody who actually became my good dear friend, who was a CHRO, and the position was eliminated, and showed up in my office and started crying, and like, oh my God, I don't know why I'm crying. If somebody had done this to me, I would have thought like they were so unprofessional. And I mean, I just introduced her to so many people. I'm not networked at all. I don't know where to start. And I was she's taken me with her everywhere she's ever gone. And that's what happens, right? People remember.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a real strong, like, people first mentality. Like, not that numbers aren't important, right? But really it's people first all around for you and how you approach everything. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So you've been in business for a while, and I'm sure there's a lot of lessons learned that we could talk to you about. But when it comes to the culture, is there something that, looking back, you would do differently now? Or is there like a big, lesson learned when it comes to culture that you could share?
Sure. Lots of things. You actually touched on one of them, which is an important thing to note. So I think sometimes, because we go on and on and on about, we don't track metrics and in that way, and it's about relationships, and it's about this and it's about that. And then we have somebody who's underperforming, right? And in some cases, great for the culture, honestly, like really like fun, boisterous person to be around. But, at the end of the day, we do measure some things in terms of numbers because we're a business, and that is how we stay in business. And so I think, we've had trouble early on, and maybe even recently, if I'm being honest, with when we hold somebody accountable to things, it's a shock, but this is Juno. We don't do that. We're about the people. And, I had a bad 6 months, that's half a year. That's a long time. So we do, I think we sometimes have gotten, so lost in the like, we're different and we're fun and we're cool and we're hip and we have all these perks, that when there is, you're actually held accountable to do your job, it's caught people off guard sometimes.
So we talk all the time about the future of work, right? And what it's going to look like. And we're coming out, I still sometimes feel like we live in this dystopian society of, of people getting sick and whatnot, but we are coming out of the most recent challenges of our economy and world. What do you, give me your prediction, your crystal ball. What do you see as the future of work?
Well, according to the New York Times this morning, we are not coming out of any financial crisis anytime soon.
Right.
Little stomach. The update was a little stomach wrenching, but yeah, I mean, good question. Where are we in the catchphrases right now? Quite quitting. It was on to something else, wasn't it? I don't know. It's hard to keep up with. I think it's funny. We were giving a presentation yesterday to the local regional NFP team. That's our acquiring company. And it was great. We had an opportunity to meet a lot of people within the region at their quarterly meeting. And Marie, who, this is terrible, I'm not exactly sure what her title is, but let's call her the head of, because she kind of is in this local region, from like an administrative and operational standpoint. And she's a phenomenal person. And her son, now I'll give a plug for what I just talked about. So was in a job search and we introduced him to a few companies and he ended up getting a job. Not something we were working on, but just, we love Marie and her son's very talented. And he is, he is wanting a little more office time and a little, people in the office. And, she commented on other sort of younger who are starting to crave that. And I think we're making a real mess by saying virtual forever. And that, I think there's such polarizing views on this right now. And that's certainly not like a blanket statement, but I don't know that offices are gone forever. And I really think, certainly within Juno, I think the folks that have suffered are often the early career who are not getting the benefit of working, shoulder to shoulder with us. And so, I mean, I don't think we'll, certainly Juno would never go back to 5 days in the office ever. I don't want that personally. And
you're not going to pull an Elon Musk?
No. But I do have an unpopular opinion, which is it's his company. He can do whatever he wants. Why do we give this guy so much airtime?
I am going to be the one. I'll tell you, I said on LinkedIn when somebody complained about that and they were like, oh, he's crazy. I said, look, I'm not a fan, but when you look at a manufacturing environment, you look at an environment where people have to be in an office and you've got half of your people not going to work, that's a real challenge for any kind of culture to exist, right? And it becomes a real, oh, you get to stay home, I don't, you get to, and it's a
very
real
hard
challenge for businesses. Yeah. And, I have lots of clients, well, I'm sure you do too, who have been in the office the whole time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think a lot, I maintain that one of the reasons we did as well as we did throughout COVID is that we were who had worked together for years, in many cases for years and years and years. I mean, I could tell on Zoom immediately, right? Yep. If I didn't know that person, I wouldn't know. Yep. But I use this very brief example of like the things that are sometimes missing. I was in the office with somebody a couple months ago, just passing in the kitchen, this client, blah, 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 blah. Just a passing comment, not even looking for a solution. Why don't you try this? And oh my gosh, they went for that. They're going to go with that solution. That's great. We're talking it through. Can I pick your brain on this? And I think, there's so much of that missing. Oh, yeah. And even missing for me, because I would listen to other people on calls and be like, that's interesting. That's not how I, would have described that company, but that's interesting. Like, hey, look, talk to me more about that. You said this company is doing this and doing that. Like, I want to know more about that. And so I think it's a mess. I think it's
you kind of mentioned the informal learning, right? The opportunity to just through connecting, learn and being
just to absorb it. Like just to hear it.
Yeah. So future of work will hold some kind of in-person schedule, if you will.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think one of the added complications again, and we are not an exception, right? We've hired people within the pandemic. We hired people everywhere. So I've got talent consultants who can support clients. I've got, so-and-so relocated with their fiance is moving to Texas. Okay. The president of our search division, in pandemic, she's been with us for almost 12 years. Obviously phenomenal person and phenomenal employee and, very much important key member of our leadership team, and moved to South Carolina, in the Charlotte suburb. And I'm very supportive of that. She's still the president of our search division. She flies up here, a couple times a year, if not more. So it's tricky, right? So it's tricky to now say to local people, you've got to be in 3 days a week.
Mm.
But here are the carve outs because they're not within commutable distance. And you can no longer hold everybody to the same standard. I don't know. And, small companies trying to Comcast is trying to figure this out. Comcast pulled everybody back Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Similarly, they now have people that are not within, and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's going to be, this will be an interesting couple of years. And I must say this all the time, and I apologize, but I just wish I was in school and I could do research on this and what it's going to all turn out to be. And, we're in for, some more surprises, I'm sure.
Well, I think we've learned, well, hopefully we've learned to be flexible. And I think that need to be flexible isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other piece, and Michael, you've talked about this since the beginning of this discussion, is the trust piece, right? The trust piece that I'm not making arbitrary decisions just because, right? It's trusting that as a leader, I'm making the right decision. And if you haven't created your working relationship with your employees based on trust, you're in trouble now.
Yeah.
And because you really are being held. And I think, that's one of the things I admire about you and your leadership is it is all based on trust. And I think that it is a mess, but organizations who have the foundation culture like yourself have much better chance of figuring it out than some others.
I think we will. And I think, one thing that always surprised me too was this notion of fairness. I got to say that has come up more than what's not fair. Well, this person, has gotten this and that's not fair. And this person's gotten that and that's not fair. This person has that person's team was already developed. Why am I being measured in the same, that's not fair. It's not fair.
This makes me shudder.
And I think we have to, right. Like
you have 2 kids. Life ain't fair.
Yeah.
Right, right. If I had $1 for every time my dad said that to me growing up, I wouldn't need to work.
True. But I think in trying to figure this out, it is going to have to be like, well, it's not fair. So-and-so doesn't have to come in. Yeah. Right. That might not feel fair. But here's why we feel like it's right.
Yep. So we could talk all day, clearly. And you very briefly mentioned in the beginning a recent partnership and a sale of Juno. What's the future hold? What's next? What do we expect to hear from you all?
So the acquisition has been some pretty big news, of course, for us. We grew the company. COVID was a time of accelerated growth, I think, for a multitude of reasons, some of them external, some of them internal. So we launched a couple new divisions. One specifically was JTS, Juno Talent Solutions, which is very RPO-ish. And within pandemic, we landed this monster account to staff COVID-19 hotspot field hospitals and ICU. They were taking shipping containers and turning them into ICU rooms and parking lots. And we became a staffing engine behind a particular company who was getting all those government contracts. And it was really interesting work. So that was like, that ball just kept rolling and companies were calling daily. I need to hire back, 15 people. How do I do it? How can you help me? And then search really picked up like crazy. And then we rolled out an executive search division. So, I think a reaction to the market, and I think some ways that we were diversifying really played to our favor. So we went from 18 employees to 85, and we've landed somewhere back in the kind of high 60s. And the phone was ringing. It was a very strong, M&A market, a lot of investment dollars. So And over the years, we've taken calls, let's merge. We could be so much better together. Private investor. I'm a private investor. VC. Private equity money, and nothing ever felt quite right. And we were down a path with another company. Is the true transparent story. So they were UK based, looking to kind of expand in the US, and they were really bullish on us. And we got as far as an LOI, letter of intent. And I was casually talking about this with my very good friend, Rich, who is the local sort of managing partner for NFP. So he kind of said, we've been very acquisitive. And I always thought this could be such a strong partnership for us to have you guys and build out HR shared services. And, we've got employee benefits and risk management and P&C and 401k administration and HR consulting. And wouldn't it be cool to have search and staffing, and for us to be able to sort of partner and work together? And, I won't bore you with all the twists and turns of conversations over the course of 10 months, but it ended in us agreeing. And, we're super excited because this gives us a national platform to grow Juno. This gives us other things to talk about and other value adds for our clients, for their clients. And so, we're maintaining Juno brand and marketing and, sitting within NFP. And just so far, I said yesterday, as I was presenting to their local team, it feels like home. And I mean that sincerely. Like, it just, there's no like, oh gosh, was this the right thing? They're changing us. It's like, nope, we're home.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what's up? Like I said, I could talk all day. Mikal, thank you so much for your time. And, the humanize the process is my takeaway, and pay it forward. And, we really thank you. I wish you all the success at your, in your next stages with Juno and the firm, and look forward to talking with you again.
Thank you both. This was fun.
Great meeting you, Mikal. Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
so much.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening. We hope you got a ton of value out of this episode.
Before we go, we want to thank the sponsor of our show, the Mid-Atlantic Employers Association, more commonly referred to as MEA. MEA provides human resources services to hundreds of businesses across numerous industries every day, bridging gaps that restrain innovation and growth.
If you need support around people issues, reach out to meainfo.org. Better people, better outcomes.